We are back on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio, News Talk 1180. Clay, interesting interview with Dr. King.
She seems like a pretty interesting lady, and she seems pretty active for her age.
Yeah, she really is, and we're going to have her back. She was only able to give us a little bit of time, but we'd love to have her back.
I liked her discussion of entitlement versus empowerment.
Yes, and she wrote a great article about Herman Cain and why the establishment was after Cain. So I think that's something I'd like to talk to her about.
Well, who's
in the
next?
future.
Rick Santorum?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We're going to take a little bit of a turn.
Major turn.
Major turn. Our guest in studio for the last half of the show is Harley Pinson, candidate for Kern County Supervisor. Harley, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Thank you. Good morning, Marty. Good morning, Clay.
Good morning, Harley.
This is going to be...
You mentioned about people who are active for their age, and I think you guys are in that category, too.
Oh, you could see that one coming.
We're just children on the radio.
Well, listen, Harley, since you and I are 2 days different in age.
Yes.
But I think
Yes.
you're the older one, if I remember right.
Well, I do look older.
You're not looking for an argument, are you? So, Harley, why do you want to run for county supervisor?
Marty, we face very critical issues in Kern County, and we have issues about governance that are nationwide, really, and in Kern County we have the major issue of the political influence of public employee unions, and that has a lot to do with why we don't have the money that we would otherwise have for public safety, for public health, roads, parks, recreation, and because the county changed its pension formula, as the city council did in Bakersfield in 2004, and in 2005 it paid nothing into public employee pensions, and now it's paying about $200 million a year, and that will only increase for the next 5-6 years. So what we've had is a local government that has very much influenced by public employee unions and their campaign contributions to local candidates.
So we're getting to the point now where, looking at an article you wrote, you said, let's see, in pension reform, politicians can't serve both the public interest and the unions. Why can't they serve both?
Well, they're elected by the people. Public officials are elected by the people, and the unions are lawful. They're created by law, and they do what their job is to get the most that they can for their members. And what public officials are elected to do is to do the best job that they can for the public. And so there was collective bargaining between the city or the county and the public employee unions. And if the unions have contributed and endorsed and done volunteer work for a candidate who is then elected, and then there's a collective bargaining meeting, negotiation, then the unions effectively are on both sides of the table. They're on the side of the table of the electeds because they help the elected get there, and they're on the side of the table of the unions. And in my opinion, that's why we have the problems that we have now, is that the unions have been on both sides of the table. And so in my campaign, I will not accept contributions from public employee unions. I will decline public employee union endorsements. Not because unions are bad, they're lawful, and they do what they can for their members. But I would not want the perception to be, or the fact to be, that if I'm elected, I got there because of the unions, and that the unions, that I'm representing the unions on my side of the table as well as the public. You can't do both.
Well, based on what you just said, Harley, I can guarantee that you're going to get a shame on sign from the unions. Shame on you, Harley Pinson.
Well, Marty,
Clay.
Clay.
Put your glasses on.
I'm the better looking of the two.
That's right. I think you have to take a principled stand on fundamental issues. And people need to know, if they elect you, what side of the table you're going to be on. Are you going to be on the side of the table that's negotiating the best deal for the people from the public employee unions? Or are you going to try to satisfy the public employee unions who helped you get elected?
Harley Pinson, candidate for Kern County Supervisor, 4th District, is our in-studio guest.
I guess you can expect to be crucified as Zach Scribner was then in the upcoming election, where the unions came out against him and they brought in money from all over the state.
Well, Clay, I don't have any idea whether that'll happen or not. It's really, really possible. But again, I think I need to take a principled stand, and I think that people expect that. This is the fundamental issue that we face in local government, is who do the electeds represent? Are they there because they were put there by the union support, or are they elected by the people? And again, I have nothing against the unions. They just shouldn't wind up on both sides of the table.
Well, it's more prevalent in the state government and in the federal government, even than it is in local government. They're both controlled by unions.
Yeah, I think that particularly in California, Sacramento, that the state legislature is heavily under the control of public employee unions. But we have to ask ourselves, in the city of Bakersfield and in the county of Kern, how did the pension formula get changed in 2004? What was the influence? And all those benefits were made retroactive for work that was already performed. This wasn't just something that people thought up. It had to be because there was influence locally on the elected officials who were supported by the public employee unions and who were looking for their next office to retain the support of the public employee unions.
Then explain to me, how did the city of Bakersfield reduce the pension program for the Bakersfield Police Department from 3% to 2% a couple of years ago?
Measure D?
I think so.
We have Measure D was passed by the voters, and it was to take it out of the city council's political position, to take it away from them and to give it to the people. Measure D was fine, but it's had no effect because it only applies to newly hired people.
Well, you can't take something away from people that they worked for.
And the city has not hired anybody since Measure D was passed, so it's had no impact. I mean, it was a nice thing. It probably made some people feel good that they passed it, but it's had no effect. And we have a crisis, and it hasn't. What the real fix has to come in collective bargaining between the city of Bakersfield and the county of Kern to fundamentally change the pension system. And that's going to happen in collective bargaining negotiations, which are in private. So if any candidate for office says, well, I've got a pension reform proposal in my campaign, well, then that's the opening shot in the negotiation. Because if the candidate makes that public, then the people won't get anything more than that. They'll only get less, because that's making your negotiating position public before you ever sit down.
Yeah, which makes no sense at all. And part of the insanity is, I mean, you mentioned this in your article.
Well, it makes no sense unless you're running for office and you want to look like you're for pension reform.
Right, exactly.
And want union support.
Right.
Right. And you're showing your hand before you play the game, which is
you end up negotiating with yourself.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and again, we're looking at $226 million to pay funds for pensions today, and that number is going to go up to around $365 million by 2021, which is insane.
And in 2005, it was zero.
Yeah.
And so that is money that is not going to be available to hire sheriffs, to hire firemen, to maintain parks, to build roads. We have tremendous problems in rural roads in Kern County. We need that money to step up the maintenance of roads in Kern County. So we need to spend the money for what the people really think that they're paying for when they pay their taxes.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be back in a minute with Harley Pinson on Kern Radio News Talk 1180.